Hello, welcome to the Sci-Fi Christian. I'm Bono, and I am flying solo for you tonight on this review. That's right, no Matt, no Ben Kirkwald, no Tim Pankratz, no Daniel, no Kobe, just me. I'm all you've got. And the reason for that is that I am doing a video game review, and I believe I am the only science fiction, or Sci-Fi Christian, contributor to have played this game. I am going to be reviewing for you Bioshock Infinite, the latest entry in the excellent Bioshock series. I'm a little bit behind on this. The game's been out for a little bit under 2 months, but I think it's still probably close enough to be relevant. It's kind of the reason we don't do a ton of video game reviews on the Sci-Fi Christian, in addition to that Matt isn't really into video games and all that, but it's tough to get them out timely, especially when, you know, we're just a small little internet deal and nobody's sending us screeners or anything, and so if I play a video game new, I have to pluck down $60 for it or whatever. So very few video games I play when they're brand new, but Bioshock I'm close enough that I figured I would come and do a review for you guys. Now, just a note on spoilers. I will get into spoilers in a little bit. I'm going to start by discussing gameplay and some other general things for the first few minutes. So if you haven't played the game yet, don't skip ahead in case you wind up in a spoiler section of this video and you really don't want spoilers for this game. So I would recommend that if you're watching this, you haven't played Bioshock Infinite yet, just maybe just watch these first few minutes, and I'll make sure that I make it very clear when we go into spoiler territory. So maybe the best place to start is a bit on my own personal history with the series, if you will. I played the first Bioshock game most of the way through a couple years ago, probably 2-3 years ago, something like that. And I liked it, but I didn't love it, and I don't think I ever finished it. I'm not quite sure why. I just, you know, didn't get to the end. I got pretty close to it, but didn't actually finish the entire game. So, and then about a year ago, I bought on Steam Bioshock 2 for a fairly cheap price. So I always plan to go back and play these two games eventually, because I liked the first one, and I wanted to maybe try and approach it again, see why everyone else was so enthusiastic about it, because even though I liked it, I didn't love it. I didn't see it as being revolutionary in the way that a lot of people did. So about a month and a half ago, I started Bioshock again, kind of because of all the hype about the new game coming up. And this time I really enjoyed it. I still wouldn't say that it's my favorite game or anything like that, or even the best first-person shooter I've ever played or anything like that. But I like the first game. I maybe like the second one a little bit more, which is a bit of an anomaly for people on the series, it seems like. I get that, you know, the second one's kind of more of the same. But it's also a lot more polished. Everything in that game just felt smoother and, as a result, more fun to me. So, liked both the games. I would say, I'm not sure I would say that either of the first two I absolutely loved, but really, really enjoyed them, and enough to go out and buy this one when it was fairly new. And Bioshock Infinite, I have to say, for as much as I was not lukewarm, but not absolutely head over heels about the first two games, I was blown away by Bioshock Infinite. Almost from the very first moments of the game right up until the ending. I thought this was about as close to a perfect game as you can possibly get. And I'll discuss that in a few different ways, starting with some non-spoiler areas with kind of setting, graphics, gameplay, all that good stuff, before I get into the more spoilery territory of story, which is also a very significant contributor as to why I thought this was such a great game. So maybe the best place to start is the setting of Infinite, which is really, really well done, because it's the first game in the series that isn't set in Rapture. So Rapture, obviously the underground or underwater city from the first two games. Bioshock Infinite goes in completely the opposite direction, as you've probably seen from trailers or gameplay videos or whatever. It's set up in the clouds of the city of Columbia. So it's completely the opposite on one hand, but it's also almost identical to Rapture in other ways, in the sense that this is also a dystopian-esque city that's ruled by kind of a dictatorial person, this time in the enigmatic figure of Zachary Comstock, or Father Comstock as he's known throughout the game. And that is really the key to what makes the setting of this game so brilliant, is that it manages to do everything different from the first two Bioshock games, but also give off the feeling that there's a huge level of continuity, which there is. And that's just a remarkable thing that the game developers pulled off, to make it as something seem both brand new and also completely familiar, both in the best possible ways, right down to small details. For example, if you remember from the first two games, when you go up to the Circus of Values vending machines, and they have that kind of obnoxious voice that they always speak with, and one of the things they'll tell you is, you know, come back when you have some money, buddy. And in this game, you walk up to them, and it's the same voice, but it's not called Circus of Values, it's a different type of vending machine, but it's the exact same voice. And instead of that, one of its little sayings is, come back when you have some currency, fella. So it's exactly that. That's like, it's a small detail, but it's a perfect example of how the game feels as a whole, where it's exactly the same and completely different all at the same time. And that really contributes a lot to the setting of the game, because you have this feeling of, okay, how does this exactly fit with the rest of the Bioshock universe, which of course I'm not going to discuss at this point in the video. We'll save that a bit later till we get into spoiler territory. So love that. One of the other things that's really fun about the setting is that in Rapture, in both of the first two games, we show up in Rapture after the city has already gone to hell. So things are already really, really bad. You know, we kind of show up in post-war Rapture, if you will. In Columbia, we show up when things are still relatively normal. In fact, for the first several minutes of the game, you're walking around the city, and there's, you know, parents out there with their children and just people living their lives, and they're not crazy splicers, they're normal, and there's a carnival going on, and there's, you know, all this stuff that makes you feel like you're in a real city. And of course, since it's a, you know, first-person shooter, you know that it's going to hit the fan sooner or later. But I love those first few minutes of the game where you feel like, okay, I'm in a real city. I'm seeing what Rapture might have looked like before everything went south. Obviously different, again, because we're in a different setting, in a city with very different values than Rapture had, but still that same sense of, okay, this is what it would have been like in Rapture before it all fell apart. And that was brilliant, because this is something that Bioshock Infinite does again and again and again, which is that it makes the first two games in the series better when you go back and think about them. Because it makes you think about, we only saw Rapture as this crazy hellhole, and now it makes you go back and kind of imagine what was the city like before all that happened. And that's a brilliant piece of work in terms of storytelling, to make you take this established world and then fundamentally reconsider it based on just the first few minutes of gameplay in this third entry. And along with that, it's worth mentioning that the graphics in this game are out of this world beautiful. And that wouldn't be something I would normally mention. I think that at this point in video game history, we've all gotten over really good looking graphics. And so it's almost not worth mentioning, and it's kind of like CGI in movies. I mean, in 1991 or whenever Jurassic Park came out, it was like the thing to talk about. That, oh my gosh, we had dinosaurs and they look so real. And now it's just kind of run-of-the-mill for movies that you have that. Or same type of thing with The Matrix when that came out. It was just, whoa, that blows us all away. And now it's just run-of-the-mill. I think video games have been the same way. You know, we got 3D games, we got, you know, next generation graphics and all this stuff. And it blows you away for a while, and then it becomes run-of-the-mill. But not this game. This one was so perfectly done from a visual standpoint. It's like, okay, I've seen good-looking games before, but this is one of the best I've ever played, if not the best. It is absolutely gorgeous. And maybe along with that, just a side note, I should mention I played this game on the PC. So you might have had, I don't know how comparable the Xbox or PS3 versions are. I'd assume pretty comparable, but if there are slight differences with your experience, that might account for some of it. So I was playing on the PC. And then the other thing to mention is the gameplay, which again has that sense of being exactly the same and totally different. So instead of plasmids, we have what are called vigors this time around. Instead of Eve, you have salts that you use up. So there's that sense that really contributes again to that kind of feel setting environment. But also the game as a whole, the gameplay as a whole is just really, really smooth. Just like I mentioned that Bioshock 2 seemed like a really big step up from Bioshock 1, the first game. Infinite feels like a huge leap forward in that. It's the same type of gameplay. You've got the same mix of weapons and plasmids or vigors in this case, but it feels so much more smooth. Everything feels more comfortable. It feels like it's really, really been refined. The one significant departure, well, a couple significant departures in terms of gameplay that come in Infinite is, first, you can only carry 2 guns at a time, which at first is a little bit, takes a little getting used to if you have kind of a set style of playing Bioshock, especially if you're like me and you just played the first 2 games. But I think it works really well. It adds a whole different layer of strategy into the game, which is quite brilliant. And then another big difference is that you're not carrying things like health packs or Eve hypos or anything like that. You really have to kind of scrounge around for that stuff. And at first this really worried me because I was very reliant on those things in the first 2 Bioshock games. But the game developers do a good enough job of making sure that there's plenty of health packs around, there's plenty of salt refills around, so that it isn't like in the first 2 games where you could just kind of constantly stock up at the vending machine, so there's that added level of challenge, but there's enough around where it never feels frustrating. And I think that was a really key balance, because I was worried that by eliminating those, it was going to prove a very frustrating experience, and it didn't at all. It was extremely well done. There's also no hacking in this game. You do have a vigor that is called Possession, where you can take control of a enemy turret or even an enemy soldier, but it's temporary. It wears off relatively quickly. So when the first time I used Possession, I thought it was just the replacement for hacking, so I threw it at a turret and thought it was going to be on my side from there on out, and moments later, much to my surprise, I was being shot in the back, which was not fun, but eventually you get used to it. So hacking, again, was one of those things where at first it seemed a little bit off, but after playing for a half hour, you don't even miss it. The game works very, very well without it. And then perhaps the biggest gameplay departure is that you're constantly followed in this game by a companion named Elizabeth. And I won't say much about her at this stage of the video, except to say that this works very well. If you have fear that this is going to be a game-long escort mission, it's not. You never have to defend Elizabeth in combat, and thank God for that, because I hate, and I think I speak for a lot of people here, I hate escort missions in video games. So the fact that they didn't do that was wonderful. She actually throws you ammo and health packs and stuff at random times during combat. So she actually is very meaningful for the gameplay, in addition to being able to open certain doors for you that you can't open on your own. And she's also very meaningful for the story, which I'll talk about momentarily. If I have one gripe about the gameplay, it's that there's kind of a gameplay menu. So there's a main menu where you can, adjust your audio, video options and all that good stuff, exit to your desktop or whatever. But then there's also a gameplay menu. And it's a small complaint, but this is not well done. It's very small, at least on the PC. it's this tiny box in the middle of the screen, and I don't know why they didn't just make it full screen, because it's very hard to read. And also, maybe I just missed something in the game, but I had no idea how to access this menu for the longest time, and it didn't seem like it ever told me, unless I just missed something. I eventually figured it out, but that was very frustrating when I wanted to change some of the settings in there, and felt like the game did not make it intuitive how to actually get to what should be an easily accessible menu. So that one menu would be my sole gameplay complaint. Everything else is perfect. It's just a perfect game in terms of how it plays. Absolutely brilliant. I can't recommend it enough. So if you haven't played it yet, go out and buy it right now. You're going to love it. If you're a fan of first-person shooters, this is the game you need to play. It is a seminal work in the genre. It is the next giant leap forward in first-person shooters, and maybe even in video games as a whole, and I don't think that's hyperbolic. The game is that good. So if you haven't played it, go get it, but first turn off this video, because I am now going to launch into spoiler territory with some discussion of the story and the ending. So you do not want to see this. Don't spoil yourself if you haven't played the game. So final warning, it's spoiler time from here on out to the rest of the video, talking gameplay, or story, and ending. Okay, so the story was brilliant. I know that the ending has proved controversial. I loved it. I thought that everything in this game, story-wise, was just expertly done. I love the idea of parallel universes that they pull in throughout the game, and the way that they slowly unfold this whole concept and really draw you into the mystery of who exactly Elizabeth is, who Booker is, how they all relate to Comstock, and you get this sense of, okay, and how everything relates to the other two Bioshock games, and you get the sense that we're not seeing the whole picture throughout the story. And this slow burn unfolding that you get throughout the game was fantastic. Really, really well done. Really well paced in terms of story. I've read some complaints since finishing the game about the kind of info dump that occurs in the final minutes after your last big battle. And I don't agree. I think that info dumps are usually pretty problematic, but in this case, it worked very well. I was glad that they left a lot to be revealed. You can figure out a lot of stuff before the end of the game. You can figure out that, okay, we've got some type of parallel universe going on. Maybe that's going to tie into the other Bioshock game somehow, but you don't have all the details. You don't really know who Elizabeth is. I certainly didn't figure out that she was Anna. I certainly didn't figure out that Comstock and Booker were the same person, which was a phenomenal twist. That was absolutely brilliant. And I didn't see that coming. And maybe everyone else did, and I just am really dense and missed it, which is certainly a possibility. But I was blown away by that. And then being able to, you know, go online and read all these great theories that are already out there about the ending was just perfect. And of course, if you stayed through the credits and you see that kind of post-credit tease where we're back in Booker's office, it really makes you wonder, were they actually successful in stopping Booker/Comstock by drowning him in his baptism? It would seem to suggest that maybe not, especially since the game seems to suggest in its final moment that there's an infinite plurality of worlds where this same type of story keeps repeating itself, including Rapture in the original Bioshock. Now, I know there's been a fair amount of debate about, is Booker the same as Andrew Ryan, the same as the protagonist from the first Bioshock? And I've read different opinions on this that are both convincing. What I think the game is at least trying to set up, whether or not, you know, I'm not necessarily going to say one way or the other, because I don't know that I'm convinced one way or the other how that all pans out. But for sure, the game is trying to draw a parallel between the protagonist of the first game, Booker in this game, the little sisters, Elizabeth, Songbird, the Big Daddies, Daisy Fitzroy, Atlas, Andrew Ryan, Comstock, all the parallels are there. And of course, the lighthouse at the beginning. And it makes you wonder, were the Lutesses involved in the first game somehow? Are they overseeing this whole thing? Are they involved in all these universes? Or are they limited just to Columbia? Or is there their own version of the Lutesses in the first Bioshock world? So the game is certainly doing a brilliant job of setting up a lot of different theories to be developed there. And maybe more upcoming downloadable content is going to answer some of that, or future games will answer that. But for now, they did a great job of tying everything together in a way that is really Nolan-esque. The ending of Bioshock Infinite reminded me of the ending of Inception, where it's vague enough to form theories, but there's enough information there to feel satisfying. That's a really tough balancing act for stories like this, where you start to get into reality and parallel worlds and all that. Things can get really messy really fast. But Bioshock Infinite, like Inception, did a great job of balancing that and pulling it all off. The other thing I loved about the story was thematically what they did, in terms of you've got this whole concept that runs through all the Bioshock games of the notion that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And so you have people like Andrew Ryan who start with noble, flawed, but noble in a sense ambitions. I would certainly have moral problems with Andrew Ryan's position, but he doesn't seem like an evil guy when he starts out, but then in going through it, he becomes evil. And same thing with Comstock, who we know starts out as Booker, and as he gains power, he becomes more and more evil. But the big place where they really drew this out well in this game was in the character of Daisy Fitzroy, where they make us identify and sympathize with her cause and the cause of the Vox Populi so much during the Shantytown segment of the game, and you're pissed off by the time that segment's finished, and then they turn into the villains because absolute power corrupts absolutely, and once you start down that road of setting yourself up as dictator, you become the next Andrew Ryan, you become the next Comstock, and it's such a brilliant thematic approach that these games have developed now, taking all three as a whole, and you don't see that kind of storytelling depth in video games very often, if ever. So I absolutely applaud them for that. It's a type of depth that is so rare in storytelling as a whole, and to be able to see them weave all these different themes along with the big ideas of parallel worlds and all that, and make the game feel both larger than life and then also very human in its approach to power and all of this, and it's very human themes along with these huge sci-fi themes. You can't ask for a better sci-fi story than that. That's what the best sci-fi stories do, is hit both those levels, and this one did it perfectly. So I can't say enough good things about the story. I was completely captivated by the world, captivated by the characters in a way that I don't know that I ever have been with a video game before. This is something very unique, and I have a feeling we're not going to see games like this very often. This is one of those once every 10-year games in terms of quality. In the first-person shooter genre, the other first-person shooters that I would put on this level, going back to the early days, would be Doom 2, kind of that first generation. GoldenEye really took things to the next step on the N64. Half-Life 2, 10 years ago, and now Bioshock Infinite. I'd really put it in that group of games. It's that good. And of course, you know, not to say there aren't brilliant games in other genres. I'm kind of limiting the discussion just to first-person shooters. So, closing, I love the game. As somebody who really liked but didn't love the Bioshock series up until this, it completely won me over and has amplified my opinion of the other two games significantly. I can't say enough good things about it. If you did stay this far, even though you haven't played the game again, go buy it. I'm in the process of replaying it right now. It's that good. And if you've played it, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on the ending, maybe your theories, what have you. But in the meantime, we have a great first-person shooter that's fresh off the shelves with downloadable content coming soon. As a video game fan, this is a very good thing. Well, that's all for now then. I am Ben Bono, and this is the Sci-Fi Christian. Goodbye.